So, welcome to today's deep dive. And to kick things off, I want you to imagine for a second that you are moving into a brand new house.
Okay.
The architect hands you the keys, right? And you walk inside, and I mean, the floors are this gorgeous hardwood.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
the roof is solid, the plumbing is state of the art, like everything looks completely immaculate.
Sounds like a pretty good setup.
Right. But then, as you step into the living room, you realize there is one glaring problem. There are no exterior walls.
Oh, wow. So just an open platform, basically, like completely exposed to the elements, just sitting on a foundation.
Exactly. Anyone can just walk right in. The wind blows straight through the dining area. You've got this pristine kitchen, but suddenly a stray dog wanders in and falls asleep in front of your refrigerator.
That's, yeah, that's not really a house anymore.
No. I mean, the function of the house is undeniably there. You can theoretically cook a meal. You can theoretically sleep in the bedroom. But the boundary of the house is completely missing. And because of that missing boundary, you can't actually live there. It ceases to be a functional home.
That's a great way to frame it.
Thanks. Because today's deep dive is centered on that exact tension, that subtle but honestly massive difference between a function and a boundary.
Right.
We're looking at this highly concentrated philosophical premise from a document titled The Crisis of Undefined Purpose. What is Bitcoin for?
A really fascinating piece of text.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack this radical idea in the text that Bitcoin is experiencing what the author calls a quiet abandonment.
Which is such a powerful phrase.
Yeah. And it's not because of some catastrophic technical failure, right? It's not because the code stopped working.
No, the code is running fine.
Right. But people are leaving because of a massive unresolved identity crisis.
Yeah, we are looking at a really profound contradiction at the very center of this premise. Because you have this incredibly robust, mathematically complex system. It's running continuously, it's processing data securely day in and day out,
Exactly.
and yet people are walking away from it precisely because they simply don't know what it actually is.
Right. They have the plumbing, they have the roof, but they have no walls.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
system lacks a shared definition. And when you don't define what a system is for, you invite a kind of chaos that technology alone just cannot solve.
So, I think the natural starting point here is the obvious question, right? Like, what is it actually for?
Right.
Because for anyone who follows this space, an immediate answer pops into mind.
Yeah.
The original white paper famously calls it peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Right. The white paper definition.
Yeah. And for a long time, I mean, that phrase felt like a complete definitive answer.
It does feel definitive, yeah. Because, we rely on human language to set our expectations.
Right.
But the core argument we are analyzing here makes a critical distinction that really completely upends that expectation.
Okay, how so?
Well, calling something electronic cash tells you what the system does. It describes a capability. It is a function. But, crucially, it does not tell you what the system excludes.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit, because
Yeah.
I don't entirely buy that electronic cash isn't a boundary in and of itself.
Okay, what do you mean?
Like, if I build a machine specifically optimized to act as a cash transfer system, I've implicitly built walls against using it for something completely different, like heavy video storage.
I see where you're going.
Right. Doesn't the optimization for one specific task naturally create a boundary? Like, if I build a sleek aerodynamic race car, its design makes it terrible at off-roading. The function creates the boundary.
Right. Okay. So in the physical world, your intuition is completely correct. Physics enforces those boundaries.
Yeah.
Like a physical dollar bill cannot be used as a hard drive to store a gigabyte of data.
Obviously.
And a race car's low clearance physically prevents it from climbing a rocky hill.
Exactly.
But digital networks do not operate under the constraints of physical physics. They operate under the constraints of data processing.
Oh.
So a decentralized computer network simply processes data according to consensus rules.
Right.
If you do not explicitly write a rule into the code that says you can only process this specific type of financial data,
Then it just processes whatever.
yes, the network will happily process absolutely anything you throw at it as long as it meets the basic formatting requirements. So saying this system does cache is not the same as coding this system does cache and absolutely nothing else.
Okay, wow. So without a coded exclusion, the implicit boundary we assume exists just vanishes.
It completely evaporates.
It's almost like, think of a city zoning law where the city zones a plot of land and says, this plot can be used for a bakery.
Okay, yeah.
We all understand the function. We want a bakery here.
Yeah.
But whoever wrote the zoning law forgot to add the exclusionary clause. They forgot to explicitly state that the land cannot also be used as a land zone.
Right, they left out the only part.
Exactly. So somebody opens a beautiful bakery, but then someone else backs up a dump truck and starts unloading garbage right next to the ovens.
What a nightmare.
Right. And when the baker complains, the dump truck driver just points at the zoning law and says, show me the rule that says I can't put a landfill here.
That is a perfect analogy, because the baker is relying on an implied boundary that just doesn't exist on paper.
Right.
And in a purely rules-based digital system, if the exclusionary rule doesn't exist, you cannot enforce it. The analysis we're looking at points out that without limits, everything becomes arguable.
Because there's no wall.
Exactly. Every single interaction on the network becomes a negotiation over what is permitted. The perimeter isn't just porous, it doesn't exist at all.
But this chaos, if everyone is building different things on the exact same plot of land, nature abhors a vacuum, right?
Absolutely.
When you leave the boundaries undefined, human ambition just rushes in to fill that empty space. And it doesn't fill it with one unified vision.
No, it fills it with a dozen competing, often completely incompatible visions. Because the white paper established no exclusionary limits, we see multiple identities attempting to claim the network simultaneously.
Yeah, the text explicitly mentions a few of these. Like, is it a settlement layer?
Right?
Or is it a data system? Is it a permanent record for anything and everything?
Exactly. Everyone has a different answer.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me, because let's look closely at those competing identities. On the surface, versatility is usually considered the hallmark of great technology.
Sure.
Like, we praise smartphones because they are a camera, a map, a communication device, and a gaming console all at once.
We love tools that do a million different things.
Exactly. So why is being a data system and a settlement layer and a permanent record framed as a fundamental failure of the system here? A Swiss Army knife is incredibly useful.
Well, let's break that down. A smartphone is a highly versatile tool, but Apple or Google act as a central authority to clearly define and manage the parameters of that device.
Oh, right.
The operating system is carefully orchestrated to handle those specific multiple functions smoothly without them crashing into each other.
Makes sense.
And your other example, the Swiss Army knife, it has physically separate tools. A blade, a screwdriver, a corkscrew, and you use them one at a time.
Right, they don't overlap.
Exactly. But the system we are discussing is a decentralized ledger with finite block space. There is no central authority orchestrating the traffic, and there aren't separate blades for separate tasks. Every single user is fighting over the exact same limited resource.
Oh, wow. So it's not a Swiss Army knife at all. It's more like 100 people holding onto the exact same singular blade.
That's a great visual.
Like, one person is trying to use it to chop wood, another is trying to use it to unscrew a tiny bolt, and a third is trying to use it to pry open a paint can, all at the exact same moment.
Yes. And when you have finite block space, these use cases actively destroy each other.
How so?
Well, a settlement layer requires high security, high predictability, and typically involves infrequent transfers of massive value.
Right.
But a data system implies constant, heavy processing of varied, low-value information.
Okay, I see conflict.
And a permanent record for anything implies a massive, eternal archiving project that bloats the size of the ledger forever.
Yeah, those don't mix well.
Not at all. If one user is trying to settle a critical financial transaction and a million other users are trying to permanently record random text files on the same finite ledger, they collide.
So the garbage truck hitting the bakery.
Exactly. The data system users drive up the network fees and clog the processing power, which makes the settlement layer slow, expensive, and unpredictable. Making the tool better for the data archivist actively breaks the tool for the financial user.
Because there is no shared answer about what the tool is actually for.
Exactly.
And because of that, you can never just have a technical discussion about optimization. Like, if someone suggests tweaking the code to make the network process data faster, the settlement users will block it.
Right, because they'll argue that it compromises financial security.
Yeah. So you aren't arguing about engineering anymore. You are constantly arguing about fundamental existential purpose.
Yes. A system cannot function smoothly if the people using it are actively trying to achieve entirely different, incompatible goals on the exact same network.
It's just endless friction.
It really is. Every debate about block size, about transaction fees, about network upgrades simply devolves into a philosophical debate about purpose. And you can never move on to actually improving the system because you haven't agreed on what you are improving it for.
Which naturally leads to where people turn when human consensus breaks down.
Yeah.
Like when a decentralized community cannot agree on a purpose, they inevitably look to the technology itself to settle the argument.
Yes, they do.
They look for the ghost in the machine. They assume the code will somehow dictate the purpose. But the core assertion we're exploring is that the ghost simply isn't there.
No, it's not.
Purpose does not live in the code. It is not in the proof of work, and it is not in the hash.
No, because we have this deep psychological tendency to anthropomorphize code.
Oh, for sure.
We act as if algorithms have intentions, or a moral compass, or an inherent understanding of human economics, but code is completely 100% agnostic.
It just does what it's told.
Exactly. Consider the cryptographic hash function. SHA-256 or any similar algorithm does one thing. It takes an input of data, runs it through a complex mathematical formula, and produces a fixed-length string of characters as an output.
Right.
It merely validates data integrity.
Right.
And the proof-of-work mechanism simply proves that a certain amount of computational energy was expended to secure that data.
But the hash function is mathematically blind to the meaning of the data.
Completely blind.
Like, it doesn't look at the input and say, this is a vital financial transaction between two banks. I will process this with priority.
Right.
And it doesn't look at another input and say, this is just a random image of a coffee cup. I should reject this. It just sees a string of ones and zeros that either meets the cryptographic requirement or doesn't.
Think of it like a biological immune system.
Okay.
An immune system is a brilliant, highly complex mechanism designed to identify foreign bodies. It relies on a strict set of biological markers to determine what belongs and what doesn't.
Right. It targets the bad stuff.
But the immune system itself doesn't possess a philosophical understanding of disease versus medicine. It just executes biological code based on the body's DNA.
That's interesting.
If the body's definitions are misaligned, the immune system might attack a harmless pollen grain as if it were a deadly virus.
Like an allergy.
Exactly, causing a severe allergic reaction. The mechanism works perfectly, but the definition of what it should be targeting is flawed.
Wow. Okay.
In our digital network, the hash and the proof of work are the mechanisms. They are the immune system. They validate and execute flawlessly based on rigid mathematical rules. But they rely entirely on a human definition to decide what should actually be validated.
Right. So let's synthesize this. It's like building a revolutionary engine, the proof of work, and a flawless steering wheel. The hash, but the inventors never actually defined if we are building a race car, a tractor, or a submarine.
That is exactly it.
And since that exclusionary definition, that boundary was never actually provided in the code, the mechanism just blindly validates anything that pays the transaction fee.
Yes, it processes the bakery and the landfill with the exact same mathematical indifference.
So if the code cannot tell us what the system is, and the humans using it are locked in an eternal debate over its definition, what is the practical, everyday result? Like, where does an undefined system ultimately end up?
It leads to the ultimate consequence of a system without boundaries. And the analysis provides a very stark conclusion regarding this endpoint.
What does it say?
It states that without definition, the system simply becomes whatever people can get into a block.
Whatever people can get into a block. Let's examine the economics of that, because the immediate counter-argument is that whatever fits is actually the ultimate decentralized free market.
Sure, you hear that a lot.
Right. Like, why isn't a completely open, unbiased fee market the perfect solution? Let the highest bidder win the block space.
It sounds fair on paper.
Exactly. If someone is willing to pay a higher transaction fee to store a text file than someone else is willing to pay to send a financial settlement, doesn't the free market dictate that the text file is the more valuable use of the network at that moment?
Right.
Why does the text argue that an undefined free-for-all means it's suddenly not a monetary system?
Because that standard defense fundamentally misunderstands the nature of money.
Okay, unpack that.
A monetary system is not just a neutral, commoditized vessel for data storage. Money requires immense trust, long-term predictability, and a shared, unwavering understanding of value.
Right, predictability is key.
Exactly. For a currency to function, the network facilitating it must be reliable. If you're trying to buy a cup of coffee or settle a cross-border remittance, you need to know the transaction will clear in a predictable amount of time for a predictable fee.
But if the block space is just a chaotic bazaar where space is auctioned off to the highest bidder for any random purpose, that predictability vanishes.
Completely.
Today, a block might be full of predictable financial settlements. But tomorrow, a massive entity might decide to upload thousands of permanent records like images, text files, archives.
Flooding the network.
Yeah, and driving transaction fees through the roof, causing financial transfers to stall for hours or even days.
And that's the core issue. Predictability is the bedrock of currency. If the environment becomes a free-for-all of competing data types, it becomes overtly hostile to the very concept of stable money.
Wow.
The monetary use case gets priced out or delayed by non-monetary data bloat.
So it's not a monetary system anymore.
No, the network ceases to be a functional monetary system and degrades into an undefined system. A free market of chaos is still chaos. It destroys the legibility and the utility of the core asset.
So we are back in the house without walls. The wind is howling, the dump truck is driving through the living room, and the stray dog is still by the fridge. It's totally free, completely open to the market of ideas, and anyone can do whatever they want in this space.
But you can no longer call it a house.
Right. And this structural failure brings us to the human cost of the missing boundary, circling back to the very first line of the source text.
Yes, the quiet abandonment.
Yeah. The text makes a vital psychological observation here about how users interact with technology. Because the average user might not verbally articulate that the system is philosophically undefined.
No, they won't.
They might not write long essays pointing out the missing boundary or eloquently explain the technical difference between a data system and a settlement layer.
But they feel the friction.
Exactly. Because humans crave legibility in the tools we use. We need to understand the purpose of the things we invest our time, energy, and resources into.
You need to know what we're holding.
Yeah. When a tool is constantly shifting its identity beneath your hands, the user experience completely breaks down. It's like if you sit down to play a board game, right?
Okay.
And every time you roll the dice, the other players announce that the rules have fundamentally changed because they are actually playing a completely different game on the exact same board.
You just walk away.
Right. You experience deep frustration. You wouldn't want to play anymore.
And that's why ambiguity drives people away. And the key insight from the text here is the word quiet.
Yeah, quiet abandonment.
This abandonment doesn't happen with a massive explosion or a dramatic network crash or some coordinated press release from millions of users.
Right.
It is a slow, quiet attrition. People just slowly start trying to build businesses, applications, or their financial future on a foundation that keeps moving.
Yeah.
The friction simply becomes too high.
It is the ultimate erosion of trust, which really brings us to the final, incredibly powerful axiom from the source material.
It's a great line.
It says, if you don't know what something is, you don't stay. It is a profoundly simple statement, but it carries immense weight. You don't stay.
It perfectly encapsulates the human requirement for meaning. You know, a technological network can be mathematically flawless.
Right.
It can achieve perfect uptime, running continuously without a single error in its cryptographic execution. But if the humans interacting with it cannot decipher its meaning or agree on its fundamental purpose, the technology is essentially orphaned.
So true.
The code will keep running, the blocks will keep validating whatever random data is thrown at them, but the human purpose that gives the system its value will have evaporated.
Wow. Let's summarize the journey we've taken today for everyone listening. We started by looking at a white paper that provided a clear function electronic cache but failed to encode a strict boundary.
Right.
We explored how that missing boundary created a vacuum, leading to a relentless tug-of-war over finite block space between totally incompatible use cases, like data storage and financial settlement.
The bakery and the landfill.
Exactly. We analyzed the cryptographic mechanisms, the hash, and the proof of work to understand that agnostic code cannot provide a philosophy. It only executes what it's fed.
It's a blind immune system.
Yeah. And finally, we saw how an undefined system, governed only by a chaotic free market of whatever fits in a block, destroys the predictability required for a monetary network, ultimately creating a quiet friction that alienates its users.
It really is a compelling diagnosis of a technological identity crisis. And honestly, drawing this out to its logical conclusion leaves us with a lingering question that extends far beyond just this one specific network.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, if the survival of a mathematically perfect, logically sound, flawlessly executing code-based system ultimately relies entirely on a shared human definition to maintain its value and utility, Does that mean no technology can ever truly be independent of human philosophy?
That is such a heavy thought because we spend so much time and engineering power trying to build trustless systems that don't rely on messy human social contracts.
We really do.
But at the end of the day, if we don't define the boundaries for ourselves, the technology simply cannot save us from our own lack of purpose. No matter how flawless the plumbing or the roof might be, if you don't build the walls, you just can't call it a house.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the boundaries, keep looking for the underlying why behind the tools you use every day, and we'll catch you next time.